Hi, my name is Josh Gottry. Welcome to today's weekly lesson, opportunity to present a piece, discuss a topic, address a technique, or explore a musical concept. Today we're going to talk about shakers. Shakers are a very simple concept, a whole bunch of beads or rocks or something or other in some sort of tube or box or object that encloses those little pieces, so when we make it go back and forth we get sound. But shakers are often overlooked as far as, oh, anybody can play them and it's really not hard, just go back and forth and you'll get sound. But the reality is that they can be played very poorly, or with a little bit of time, a little bit of exploration, they can be played very effectively, more so than just that casual, just shake it back and forth. So a couple things we have to think about. Number one, with shakers, like a lot of small percussion instruments, when you move them, they make sound. And so you have to be very careful to pick them up and set them down in a way that creates as little extraneous noise as possible. Okay. Second thing with a shaker, whenever you play a shaker, when you have a forward motion, you inherently are going to have a backwards motion, and both of those motions are going to create sound. So when you play, for example, a passage of 16th notes, your hand motion is actually going to be eighth notes, but the front stroke is the ones and the ands, and the back stroke becomes those e's and uhs. So you actually play half as fast as the rhythmic notation would suggest in order to create the actual sound that's notated. Okay, so once you get a shaker and pick it up carefully so as to not make sound, the next thing is to start practicing just that basic shaking motion, that basic back and forth that gives you a consistent rhythmic pulse. So a couple things about that. Number one, we want to think of this in terms of a pendulum. Whether we use our wrist to make that shaking motion or our arm to make that shaking motion, we want to make sure that our distance forward past vertical and our distance backwards past vertical are as equal as possible, because that makes our forward stroke and our backward stroke as equal as possible in sound as well. So if we want to do that with the arm, forward and backward, we're trying to go the same distance past vertical, or with the wrist, again, the same distance past vertical, so that we get as consistent of a sound as possible. Once you get just that nice pendulum stroke figured out and a nice relaxed motion, then we want to work with slightly different articulations that are possible. If we play with a very smooth and legato motion, we will get a very smooth and legato shaker sound. If we play with a snappier motion or crisper motion, we will get a more articulate or staccato sound. Obviously, with that crisp motion, it becomes very important that every one of those motions is equal, because there's going to be some residual motion of whatever the beads are inside, and we want to keep that to a minimum. Of course, there are a variety of shakers available. Each one creates a different sound. This one's a slightly larger tube shaker with very small beads, so again it has a softer or more legato sound. This shaker is a little bit more articulate, a little bit bigger beads, and a very resonant plastic shell. So you also need to consider, at least if you're available to, what shaker is best for a situation. If you've got a situation where it's a very mellow, soft section in a percussion ensemble, maybe a shaker like this is more appropriate, as opposed to a very loud passage over a concert band. Maybe a shaker like this becomes more appropriate. If you have the ability to acquire a collection of, maybe 3 or 4 different shakers for different situations, it's very beneficial. Once you've got that basic stroke figured out and that basic pendulum, now we want to start working on putting emphasis or accent on different notes, because most of the time, just like a hi-hat on drum set is not something we want to have the same ta 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 emphasis all the time. Same thing with shaker. Typically we want a slight emphasis on strong beats or agogic accents where the meter would suggest that there should be a pulse. So the first thing to work on is those forward stroke accents. Those tend to be a little bit easier, more natural for the player, so we want to start with that. So I would say the first thing you want to do is, in a context of a 4/4 time signature, just putting an accent on the downbeat, the first beat of each measure. And that's just going to be with a little bit more arm motion, a little bit more weight for that one stroke, something like this. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and 3E. And as you do that, you want to make sure that all the rest of the notes are very, very even and very consistent. Once you get one note accented, maybe two notes accent, beats 1 and 3. And then, of course, you could go to every beat, 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E. Now, if you're working the forward accents, again, those tend to become more natural. We also have to work, just like working right hand snare drum stuff, we want to work left hand snare drum stuff, we want to work on the backhand accent as well. Okay, so those are going to be E's and U's, and those are going to be something we want to work on just as much as we do the front one, because those, while they may be less common to encounter, they are sometimes more difficult to execute. So we'll start with just putting an accent on the of the first beat. 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and 1E and 2E and then as we did with the forward accents, we put two of them, the of 1 and the of 3. And then, of course, the of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and then, of course, you can start combining those accents. Say you want to put an accent on 1 and then the of 2, and just practice that pattern over and over again. 1E and 2E and 2E and 3. And we could go on with a whole bunch of different combinations. You could take any simple rhythmic snare drum book, beginning snare drum book, and just play straight 16th notes with the shaker, but accent all the notes that exist in that rhythm, or take a common book like Syncopation, Ted Reed Syncopation, and work on playing the notes that are written as accents in amongst 16th note patterns. We also want to practice different divisions of the beat. Obviously, not everything you play on shaker is going to be in 4/4 time with 16th notes. Maybe you encounter something that's more of a 6/8 situation, so you want to practice working on those the accents that come every third beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, start with a nice consistent pulse back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then start putting those accents. And again, as with anything, continue to practice little by little, just a few minutes a day playing around with the shaker. Obviously, these things can fit in your car, in your backpack, whatever you have handy, and just when you've got 5 minutes, play around with a little bit of shakers, try to create some different rhythms and accents, and just get used to playing that pendulum motion back and forth really consistently, and you can get some great things happening with your shakers. Enjoy. Have a great day.